like took everything that was great about the first one and like turned it up to 11. Like I'm really like big on kind of soundtrack and score for movies. And like for me, like that can really make or break a movie or make a movie like way better. And just like it was kind of reminded me of Black Panther. Like the score just perfectly went with all the different places you were at. They just did a good job of getting that feeling and that vibe in every different scene of what was going on or who or what kind of random character we were with. Man, it was awesome. I had a blast.
Welcome back to the Movie Dads podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Howie.
I'm Kyle.
And that's Kyle. We are back for episode number 9. 9, Kyle, and that's right this time. We got them all counted. We're all accounted for.
I went back and counted all. I'm like, are you sure? I thought we were at 7.
I write it down. Episode number 9. I have folders for every episode on my computer. Episode number 9, big premiere, movie of the week, Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse.
Man.
The animated instant classic.
Instant classic.
Instant classic.
Say that right now.
Big premiere movie of the week. Those of you that listen regularly know the rules. We will give a spoiler-free thoughts on the movie. And then we will give a spoiler warning. Then we'll deep dive into some of the exciting tidbits, fun facts, and parts of the movie that you might not want to hear. So if you look at the timestamps on the episode description, you can jump right ahead past the segment going over the spoilers into our There Can Be Only 5 segment.
Yep.
But
which is like another good one this week, man. Ooh. I can't wait. There's
we are
some claws out.
We are all in this week on animation and Spider-Man. This episode is all about it. That's all we're going to talk about.
That's right.
We are at episode 9. Those of you not familiar with the podcast, we do every other week. We do new movies of the week, and the weeks in between, we do different segments. You have to see this movie. I can't believe you haven't seen this movie, or just a nerd-stalgia throwback because we really want to watch a movie. After our introduction, we do our news of the week, which is our favorite segment, 6 to Midnight. Kyle's favorite segment. He likes to say 6 to Midnight. Then we do our movie review, and we end the episode with our There Can Be Only 5, where we each pick a category. We rank our top 5 favorites in a category. We have 2 doozies this week that tie in with our big premiere movie, and we both are adamant we are going to have some knockdown.
We have 2 lists.
Discussions.
We have 2 lists that are right and 2 that are wrong.
Okay. All right.
Both of the right ones.
But we are movie dads. We have movie kids. So school's out for summer, like we talked about a little bit last week. I'm ready for school to be back in session. I am.
Facts.
Send them back. They've been out for 2 weeks.
Scientific fact.
It's good to go. We both had the pleasure of taking our boys to go see Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse. We did not sit together, so it was a little less distracting for the 2 young men to stay focused. Obviously you were behind us, so I don't know how Grayson was, but Des was enthralled with the film. He went to the bathroom one time, and it was because he couldn't hold it any longer, but he wanted to go fast because he wanted to come back and see what was going on. He didn't talk. He was
Grayson was
laser focused. And I gotta say, like, it's been a while since I go to movies at AMC all the time. It's been a while since we've gotten a full-size poster from a movie. I got all these tiny little ones tinking around my basement. Full-size poster.
Giggity. That's what
Dig it.
Grayson did great. He also was like locked in on the movie. I made an executive decision this time. I did not get him a drink, but I also brought a ace up my sleeve. My brother-in-law, shout out David, he sprinted off of work to jump in the car and sprint to Council Bus with us to go see it. And the rule was you take him to the bathroom when he has to go. So he did. He only went twice. So
That's not bad. That's
he
not
wanted
bad.
to go 3 times, but the third time we both were like, "You're not moving. Sit down."
Mhm.
So, but he loved it. He loved it, just
Yeah.
like Dad did. So,
Yeah. Same. So, good stuff all around. Well, I can't wait to talk about the movie. We both said before we started recording, like we could talk about this movie for the entire episode.
facts.
There's a lot to talk about, and there's a lot
Mhm.
to. We just saw it. Like, this is the first time where we're recording immediately after seeing a movie, so we have a
Yeah.
lot of instant reaction. Kind of, we're blood's pumping. We're ready to go. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah. Speaking of blood pumping, let's jump into my most excited segment of the week, our 6 to midnight. So these are the things that we are juiced about for this week. Like Howie said, I just want to talk about Spider-Man, but there was a new trailer drop this week for the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie, the Seth Rogen one that's coming out, Mutant Mayhem. Man, I love that the first trailer they dropped was like, "Can I kick it?" It was like cool, fun, 90s like rap. And then this trailer, it was like, okay, we showed you that these are like cool kids having fun, being dorky and being goofy. This next one took that song and kind of like mashed it up to make it sound more like epic and action and like serious. And they showed that the turtles can be like serious and a little scary and a little bit more kind of fighty Ninja Turtles, like 1990 vibes. So it looks great. I'm freaking pumped for it. We finally got a good look at the main villain, Superfly, who I believe is played by Ice Cube. Which they had like classic movies where they release toy figure lines way before the movie comes out, and we can see what basically the characters look like. Same thing happened with the Spider-Man movie. So we got to see like what the characters looked like, but to see kind of their vibe was cool. So John Cena is one of the voices in it too, but I don't think he was in this trailer. But trailer looks great. I'm freaking stoked. I can't wait till we can get to Ninja Turtle weeks, because I think we're going to do 2. So, yeah, that's my 6 to midnight.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. I like the trailer too. I think Jackie Chan looks pretty awesome as Splinter too. That looks.
He's so fun. There's a moment where Leo like tells on the 3 boys to Splinter, and they're like, "Leo, you ratted us out," and Splinter's like says something like, "You can't use that word," and they're like, "It's 2023."
Yeah,
it's like, oh, I see what you did there. That was great. Yeah, I think he's going to be a great Splinter.
It was nice to get a full trailer. I'm pretty excited for that movie too. The animation style looks really awesome. It's kind of got that Spider-Verse like right out of a comic book kind of deal, but almost like more raw. I mean, it's
like you can see the drawing. Like it looks like every scene has been drawn. I meant to mention that because when I watched the trailer earlier this week, it was on my phone. So like I'm looking at this big, but then when we're at the theater tonight, it played, and that was like the first thing I picked up on was like the animation. Like you could see some pencil lines on some stuff that made it, like you said, kind of raw, but in a good way.
Yeah, and it looks neat too because they cast actual teenagers as the Ninja Turtles, which kind of some unknown
wild
kids.
Thought.
Yeah. It's amazing, age appropriate, So no, it looks great. Mine's also kind of on the animated front, kind of not. So there was news that came out that they were making a live action, How to Train Your Dragon, which was a movie we've talked about a little bit, because I had it as one of my high fantasy top franchises. I had How to Train Your Dragon on there because it's an epic, amazingly well done trilogy of animated movies. And if you got kids, your kids probably love these movies. They probably love the show on Netflix. So they're making live action now. The news this week was they've cast Hiccup and they have cast. Oh man, I had it written down. Is it Ingrid, the main girl?
The girl,
yeah.
I don't know if that's right. Maybe.
Yeah. So
I didn't know that there was going to be a live action movie. So
yeah, so excited about that's going to come out in 2025. I don't know if you saw The Black Phone, but the main character in that, Mason Thames, is the name of the young man that is in the lead in The Black Phone. If you haven't seen that movie, it's awesome. So he's going to play Hiccup, which
scary.
I think is cool. Scary. It is. It's scary. It's a great movie. I think it's Scott Derrickson did that. He's the one that did Sinister. And then,
dude, horror movies that directly involve kids as main characters, like,
it's good. It's a good movie.
Out. I'm signing out.
So yeah, he's the main character in Black Phone, and he's going to be Hiccup, and then it's Astrid. That's what it is. It's Astrid. Astrid.
They're going like kid. They're like
yeah, like
so it's just like rebooting.
Yeah, they're going to tell the story. So, and then the Astrid is going to be played by Nico Parker, which she was in the live action Dumbo, and then she's probably well known as she played Pedro Pascal's daughter in The Last of Us.
Now I know exactly
in the first episode. Yeah, in the first episode. So she's going to play Astrid.
Yeah, cool.
The main thing I think that's a big takeaway about this, because obviously Disney gets a little bit of a rub because they want to remake everything, right? And this is obviously not Disney. This is DreamWorks. The one thing that I think DreamWorks has done absolutely right is Dean DeBlois is the writer and director of the original trilogy of How to Train Your Dragon. He also did Lilo and Stitch. He used to work for Disney. Came over to DreamWorks, did the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy, written, directed. He's writing and directing the live action remake.
Oh, cool.
So they got the same guy. So I think that's pretty cool. Again, I'm excited to see that because that world's so amazing animated. I'm interested to see what that looks like live action. I think that'll be cool.
Yeah, I hope they make it look as cool as James Cameron makes the Avatar world look.
That would be pretty awesome. Make the dragons look pretty epic. That'd be awesome.
That's a good point.
So it's quick 6 to midnight this week. It wasn't a huge thing, but we want to talk about
the story of your life on both accounts.
Yeah.
Bazinga. Sorry.
I'm sad now. But yeah, so a little bit quick through that because we want to get to our big premiere movie of the week, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Spoiler free to start. Initial thoughts on this movie. We've talked about this before. Like when we did our rankings for top 5 Marvel movies, you had the original, Into the Spider-Verse on your list. I said I thought it was overrated. I never said it was a bad movie. If we did top 5 Spider-Man movies, it would be on the list. I'll tell you that right now. Okay.
I agree.
But I didn't think it was like this,
Oh, we're talking about the original one. Okay.
The original one. I didn't think it was, like, oh, the end all be all Spider-Man movie like a lot of people made it out to be. It's cool. It looks great. The story was cool. The animation's fantastic. I liked all of it. But I think it was overrated. I don't know. Rotten Tomatoes was like a 98%, right? Like it was near perfect.
It was a good movie. I liked the first one a lot.
It was.
Just
I'm not saying it wasn't. I'm saying it wasn't a good movie. I'm saying it was overrated. Anyway,
disagree. Let's move on.
That's fine. Anyway, my initial thoughts on Across the Spider-Verse. The first thing I will tell you, if you're listening to this podcast, if you like comic book movies at all, you need to go see this now.
Go see it right now.
You need to go see it in IMAX or on the Dolby or whatever giant jumbo screen you can. You need to sit somewhere right in the middle with a good view of the screen. And just like the first one, the soundtrack's epic.
Oh, the soundtrack is so good.
Amazing. The animation's even better. Like it's so much better. The new characters are awesome. I can't recommend enough that you need to go see it. It's very emotional. There's a lot of heart in this movie. There's some dark parts. Not terrible, but I mean it was fine taking the kids. The action's great. The acting, the voice actors, it's incredible. Shamik Moore as Miles Morales is an awesome hero.
God, he's good. So
And
good.
yeah, and I thought Haley Steinfeld, this was almost just as much her movie as it was his
Yeah,
as
she
Spider
very
Gwen.
much felt kind of like the main character. I was thinking that kind of halfway through, or a little
Yeah,
towards the
it
end. Like
really
she's
felt like
been a
they were.
pretty main character here.
Yeah, that's for both of them. It was
Hmm.
equal parts in that movie. Like she basically starts the story, and it kind of ends with him and her, in
Yeah.
the movie, without giving any much away. But um, boy, I loved a lot of it. What were your initial thoughts on this movie?
I mean, talk about a sequel better than the original. Like, and I love the original. This
Mm-hmm.
was awesome. It like took
Yeah.
everything that was great about the first one and like turned it up to 11. Like, I'm really like big on kind of soundtrack and score for movies. And like for me, like that can really make or break a movie or make a movie like way better. And just like it was kind of reminded me of Black Panther. Like the score just perfectly went with all the different places you were at. They just did a good job of getting that feeling and that vibe in every different scene of what was going on or who or what kind of random character we were with. Man, it was awesome. I had a blast. I'm so glad that I brought my little brother to take Grace into the bathroom because I didn't want to miss a second of it. It was so good. Um, like it made just Miles Morales. It just made him so much cooler. Not that he wasn't cool in the first one, but like I'm trying so hard not to dive into spoilers,
Mm-hmm.
but it honestly like for me, if there's movies that are coming out, there are definite movies that I'm like, oh, I'm gonna wait till that comes on Disney Plus. Cough, cough. Doctor Strange movies. um, and this is a movie like don't do that. You have like go see it. Don't wait. Go by yourself. Go with friends. Like don't
Mm-hmm.
wait to go see this movie. It was great, and it did a great job of giving you everything that you wanted,
Mm-hmm.
but leaving you kind of wanting more in a
Mm-hmm.
perfect way. That like I want to watch more of the movie, and it was pretty long too. So
Oh, it's very long. Yeah.
giggity. So yeah, I mean in terms of I guess we'll do our ratings after the spoiler free or
Mm-hmm.
spoiler thoughts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like let's just jump into it. Go see the movie. It's great. Let's jump into some spoilers.
All right, there it is. Spoiler warning. Spoiler
Get
warning.
out.
Spoiler
Get
warning.
out. Um, man, frick yeah, this movie kicked ass.
Did.
The score was so great that like man, Miles Morales, I've never like not that I'm not a Miles Morales fan, but like I grew up with Peter Parker. Spider-Man's like when I
Correct.
think of Spider-Man, that's my
Yep.
Spider-Man.
Yes.
This movie, like driving home, all I could think was this Spider-Man is now going to be like known as like the Spider-Man for a
Mm-hmm.
generation because this is
Yeah.
just it's so awesome. Um, I love the characters that they brought in, the different Spider-Man that they brought in. One of like, not to dive like completely into the like ending spoilers, but like when they talk about him as being like an anomaly,
Yeah.
like this Miles Morales was not supposed to be
He
Spider-Man.
was a mistake, right?
He was a mistake. So all these
Mm-hmm.
other Spider-Men, Spider-Women, Spider-People, they all have the same essential story or main parts of their
Mm-hmm.
story. Um, except for Miles, he was never supposed to be a Spider-Man, so he's an anomaly. So his story isn't supposed to match. But like they did such a good job of kind of capturing the classic Spider-Man where it always feels like he's trying to do 10 things at once and he can't do any of them right.
Mm-hmm.
It like even when he's in his like in the storyline that's not supposed to be Spider-Man because he's not supposed to be Spider-Man, he's still going through that. So like even when it's him fighting or trying to get away from thousands of other Spider-Men, like I don't know, it was cool. They introduced some spider characters that I had never seen, like um the Indian Spider-Man. I
Yeah.
forget what the mum. What was it? Mum
Mumbat,
Brooklyn or something?
yeah,
Mumbattan. Yeah,
Mumbattan,
like
like
Manhattan.
Manhattan.
Mumbai. Yeah,
Yeah,
like he was hilarious.
mhm.
He was awesome.
And he had
Um,
the canon, like his love interest, like the Gwen Stacy version, like her dad
mhm,
was supposed to die
yeah,
because Spider-Man couldn't save him. And just what you just talked about, like even he's in that part, he's like, I can do both. I can save this busload of people and I can save him.
yeah,
And he wouldn't have been able to unless Miles was there. And
yeah.
that's kind of where it steamrolls into this, like Miles was a mistake. Miles isn't supposed to be there. He's not supposed to be changing these things that are supposed to happen. That was awesome. That whole like story, how there's like this canon in Spider-Man that has to happen. Uncle Ben has to die.
It
Like,
makes him feel so important. Like
yes.
it makes him, even though he's an anomaly, he's not supposed to be Spider-Man. And there's every freaking Spider-Man from every freaking media that we've
Mhm.
ever seen was in this. Like
And then some.
live action and not live action,
Yeah, we
cartoons. And
Toby was in there.
yep, it was.
Andrew
I
Garfield
love
was in
that.
there. They
I
made a
love that.
reference to Tom Holland's Spider-Man
Yep.
with a little that Doctor Strange nonsense
I knew you
comment.
were gonna love that part.
I mean, well, and we had uh, Donald Glover as the
Oh,
Prowler.
what a great little moment.
Yeah,
How
because
awesome.
he was in
He did the
Homecoming
voice for
very
the
briefly
original Miles
as
Morales cartoon.
Miles's uncle, Aaron. Not as the Prowler, but it's kind of full
Oh,
circle
I
that
think
he
I lost you.
shows up as the Prowler. So that was pretty awesome.
Camera froze for a second. Can you hear me? Are we good?
Yeah, we're
Okay.
good.
I don't know. That was weird.
Okay.
My end. Anyways, yeah, Donald Glover being in it was great. He's obviously very connected to the Miles Morales character, so it's cool to get him. It's cool that they did that. Like,
yes,
it just like it was just so much fun. It felt like they knew Spider-Man. Like they just put so much effort into hitting like home runs of every character and what they are supposed to be. um Poe Dameron was just freaking fantastic.
Oscar
Oscar
Isaac's a
Isaac
stud.
is just he was great. Like there's something about like like the bad guy being who is a good guy and
Yeah,
who's doing things that he thinks is what the good guy should be doing,
yeah,
but going about it as if it's like a bad guy. Like that just like, man, he was awesome.
yeah.
um
Also, Oscar Isaac played Miguel O'Hara, which is Spider-Man 2099, who turns out to kind of be like this. I don't want to say evil, but like kind of not good version of
Yeah,
Spider-Man. He's not a bad guy. He's just like he's the
he's
one that's
been
like, well, these people just have to die, and we're gonna have to lock you up because you're not gonna stop us.
well, and I think that's like the tragic the tragedy of a character, a good guy who's been broken so bad,
Right.
or like has had so much trauma that it's just broken him. And like, so he does every decision he makes is because of like the things that have happened to him. And now he's at a point where he will pull no punches of how he gets there.
Yeah.
So that was, oh man, it was just, there was a lot of fun. One of my favorite characters in this, and maybe it's more the actor than the character, is the Spot. I don't know if you and I have ever talked about my favorite Christmas movie ever, but Klaus on Netflix
Yeah.
is came out
Yeah.
2018 or 17 or something, but it has instantly become like our number one Christmas movie.
Nice. It's a
I
good
freaking
movie.
love it. And he's the main voice
Yeah.
in that movie.
Jason Schwartzman.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Spot character was the exact same like personality from Klaus. So like the second that he started talking, I was like, is that Klaus? Oh, I love this movie. Like, and he was just so funny. They did an awesome job of taking a super goofy, boring character.
Yes.
They even break the fourth wall essentially and say he's an every week character, like he's not important.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the perfect story of like, a nerd that everyone's beat down, and he goes out of his way to make himself more powerful. Now he's taking it out on everybody.
Yep.
Which I thought, like, once we started getting kind of closer to the end, it was like, man, this is so long. I feel like it's got to end soon because this has just gone on so long. But there's so much left to like unravel and wrap up that there's no way. And then of course they ended with a to be continued, which and when that happened, I immediately like, yes, fuck yes, let's go. Give me another one of these.
I knew they were making it 2 parts because that was pretty much that was announced. Like it was going to be.
I didn't. Maybe I just never saw that.
Yeah, it was announced it was going to be a part 1 of 2, like to finish the story. I didn't know it was going to just be a to be continued. I didn't know it was going to be that. I thought maybe it would have a nice little tidy up. No, we got the Twin Towers, like we're right in the middle of some stuff, and you're going to have to wait. And it looks like so the next one's Spider-Man Beyond the Spiderverse, which will come out in March of next year. So we don't even have to wait a year.
Oh my God, that's like
it's already done. They already made it. They made them together.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah, they made them together.
Hey, Sony, way to double your money.
Yeah,
right?
Way to go, Sony. You screwed up a lot for a lot of years. Nice job.
But man, you're proudly waving that Spider-Man flag right now.
Yeah, you did a great job. We got. It looks like we're getting. There was when this one was getting ready to come out, everybody was like, "Do we get Nicolas Cage back as Spider-Man Noir?" And no, we didn't. But it looks like, based on the ending, he's back in the third
back, baby. Yeah, I thought that same thing. I almost thought that the cowboy Spider-Man was him because his voice kind of sounded like it.
You know who I really liked? I liked a couple different characters too. Andy Samberg was a Scarlet Spider. I thought he was hilarious.
Oh my God. They played that so perfectly with his like 90s horrible comic version where he's everything the world is ending. Yeah. He says out loud everything that he's thinking. Yeah. That was such a perfect character.
And you know who else I really liked too was I really liked Daniel Kaluuya was Hobie Brown, Spider-Punk, which he was awesome. Yeah, he was awesome. And then his animation was cool too because it was very like I don't know, like graffiti poster-ish. Like it was
like
neat.
Punk rock.
Yeah.
Incarnate. It was
cool.
He was an awesome character too.
He
was very like against the like his character was very punk rock, like screw the man against the establishment. And when he first showed up, I was like, oh, this is the guy who's trying to take Miles' girlfriend. Like, I don't like him. And then boom, I'm like, oh, now I know why everyone likes him because he's fucking cool. And he actually likes Miles. And then he helps Miles. Like
he does. Yeah.
And I assume we're going to get more of him in the next movie.
I think he was at the portal at the end of the movie with Gwen. I think he was in that group.
Yeah, he was. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
So I think, so we're going to get some of them. But the cast, though, I don't think we talked. We briefly touched on it. You talked about Oscar Isaac a little bit, but Miguel O'Hara, man, what an awesome character! He's a badass and like super intense. They even kind of make jokes about it, like he's on this platform and it's like slowly lowering, and Miles is like, "What's going on?" And Gwen's like, "Yeah, it's this thing. It just goes slow.
It's going slow. Just leave it."
Man, we talked a lot about this movie. Shamik Moore was great. Like, Man, the whole family aspect with Miles and his parents and Gwen and her dad and like that,
Mhm.
the whole opening with her backstory and killing Peter Parker, her friend in her universe, and like how he was her best friend and he turned himself into the Lizard to fight like bullies and stuff, and she ended up killing him.
Yeah.
And then she basically like tells her dad that she's Spider Woman, and he goes to arrest her, and she just disappears, like she leaves. She,
Yeah.
it
And it
was,
breaks him.
yeah.
Breaks him.
And the emotions with that, the whole parents and kids thing, and like you can tell your parents if you need to, if there's something you got to tell them, you can tell them, kind of
Yeah.
deal.
Oh
And
yeah.
I mean, there was a lot to it. And as much as like, we talked about the plot, like the Spot was created because Miles, what he did to destroy the collider in the first one,
Mhm.
created the Spot. But that never would have happened if Miles wouldn't have been the anomaly that he is, right? Because
Mhm.
his Peter Parker, which was Chris Pine in the first one, would have lived if not for
Yeah.
him.
Yep.
And the Spot is basically like his arch nemesis. And like you said, he's super goofy, and he kind of gets a little power trip and gets stronger and is causing, these rifts, and he's going to kill everybody that Miles knows. And that's kind of the whole point of Miles is like, you can't tell me my family has to die because it's canon. It's
Yeah.
like our
Yeah.
job is to save people. I'm Spider-Man. I have to try and save everybody. That's
Yeah.
my job. I kept thinking back to the line in Infinity War where Vision has the Soul Stone in his head, and he's just like, "You just take it out, like destroy it right now." And Captain America's like, "We don't trade lives. Like that's not what we do." And
Yeah.
it's very, and Captain America and Spider-Man and even Superman, like that, the whole like, we have main one main job, and it's to help everybody we can.
Yeah.
We will never stop trying. Loss will happen, but we will always, as these like all American good guy superheroes, we will always do what we can to save people. And I think
Yeah.
that's the main line for Miles in this movie. It's like, even as a 15-year-old kid, he's like, that's what I have to do.
Yeah. And that, I guess, I have zero gripes about this movie because I think it's freaking
Zero.
amazing. It is interesting that there is a entire world full of like thousands of Spider-Man, and none of them are having that mindset, with the exception of like the Peter Parker Spider-Man that was his mentor, where he's like, and even he kind of
Has
goes,
to be convinced.
yes, like it's like, I don't know, like when you've got a room full of Spider-Man, you'd think a lot of them would have that same thought of like,
You would.
that's who we are. Like we save people, we try. And the mindset of like, well, if we do too many of these cannon breaks, then we'll ruin the rest of we'll destroy the whole universe. But we don't know that for sure. And like that was kind of what I think Miles was kind of getting at, of
Mm-hmm.
like, well, you don't know that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like, just in terms of like, especially the Spider-Man that were there that we know from different shows and movies
Mm-hmm.
and stuff, I think, one of them would have had that same thought of like, we can't be chasing this kid and putting him in a cage because this guy says it'll end the universe. Or maybe
Yeah.
they would. I don't know. I mean, obviously that's what
My
happened in the movie, but
my thoughts on that are, it's all because of 2099, right? Miguel
yeah, yeah,
Herrera
yeah.
is basically like, he has indoctrined into all these spider people. He's kind of the leader of like all the Spider Universe people,
Yeah.
indoctrined in them that this is the greater good. Like,
Yeah.
we can't save a few, but we can save a lot if
Yeah.
we do this and we follow this. Whole worlds won't be destroyed. And like we talked about, Miles, this whole point is, you don't know unless you try. Like, you just
Yeah.
think that's what's going to happen because it happened once.
Yeah.
So I have this feeling, and I'm spitballing here, but I have a feeling like in the sequel and Beyond the Spider-Verse, I'm gonna imagine there's gonna be a big, like, all the Spider-Men
Are
realize
gonna, yeah, for
he's
sure.
right. Miles is probably the one that's right, and we're all wrong.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's almost one of those things where you're watching it as an audience member and you're like, I get both sides, right? Like the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. But at the same time, you should try to save everybody you can. And that's, as people that read comic books and watch comic book movies, we understand that because that's what we grew up with, like reading Spider-Man stories. It's you save everybody. Superman, you save everybody.
Or at least try.
Yeah.
You don't just not try because
correct.
There's a chance that something bad could happen.
Right.
Man, speaking of kind of that moment where they're all chasing him, like that setting was so freaking badass as they're chasing him through that futuristic city. What an original kind of just thing to see. It's kind of like obviously we know that 2099 Spider-Man is like Blade Runner world. But like the train that is going up to the moon, like that was just, I don't know. I just thought that was so cool.
That was awesome.
There was a lot of tension of like, oh my God, they're going to be riding this thing all the way to the moon on the outside as all these dudes are chasing them and fighting. But that setting was really cool. Kind of the ending, the twist at the end where it took me a minute to figure out.
Did it?
Like I did not catch that he was not in his world.
I didn't until he was talking to his mom, and his mom's like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, "He's not home."
When she said that, that still didn't give it away for me. I was like, I immediately thought like, oh, she's really that oblivious to kind of the Spider-Man. Like it was when the uncle obviously walked in where I was like, oh, okay, we're somewhere different.
Yeah.
And that wasn't really the big surprise. It was more of like when his uncle walks him upstairs and he says a line of like, oh, you took your braids out. And in my head, it was like, oh yeah, like I didn't think twice about it. Of like, oh shit.
The mom said the same thing. She's like,
what's wrong with your hair? But in the moment, he had just rode a freaking train to the moon, and like ran away from Spider-Man for like a day straight. So like in my head, when she said that, I just thought like, oh, like his hair looks whacked out because he was literally holding on the outside of a rocket train. Like that was where my head was at because there was just so much to think about. But when he goes upstairs and then he get onto the roof, he gets knocked out and then wakes up and he's tied up and his uncle is there. One, I'm immediately thinking like, oh, like his uncle is a bad guy through and through, no matter what. But as he's spinning around, that's when when all the pieces came together for me of like, wait a minute. If they're worrying about his hair, that means Miles is probably here. And then like right as my mind went, oh my God, Miles is the Prowler in this. Like they flipped over and kind of showed him in the shadows. That was a cool moment that I was not expecting. And I already know like that bad guy Miles Morales Prowler is going to be like super popular. He's going to come out of this like Killmonger, even though he's really small in this movie.
Yeah.
Like I think people are going to cosplay the shit out of that. The shadow version. What like obviously you've played Zelda because we talk about it all the time.
Oh yeah, Dark Link.
Yeah, like Dark Link. That's kind of the vibe I got.
Dark Miles, yeah.
Like I can't wait to watch that kind of play out more in the next movie.
Yeah, I hope he's in the next movie, at least in the first half. You would think he would be, as that kind of comes up. Yeah, the ending was, man, it was mint. Like I was excited. Like I think people were clapping. I think there were some people clapping, which I'm not a clapper. I'm not a clapper. I don't clap on airplanes. I don't clap on movie theaters. I mean, I get it, but I might have clapped at the end of Endgame. I don't know. I doubt it. Man, I can't say enough. Whatever. I can't say enough good things about this movie. When we got out of the theater and I looked at you and I said, it might be the best Spider-Man movie I've ever seen.
I think so as well.
I'm. We've been doing like this is episode 9, so we've done like 4 or 5 new movies. Like every new movie we've done, like theater wise, has been great. Like Mario Brothers was great. Evil Dead Rise was great. Guardians of the Galaxy was great. Like even when we did Dungeons and Dragons 2 weeks ago, this great movie. Like this is better than all of them.
Way better. Agreed.
And I mean, I gave Dungeons and Dragons a 9 because I love that movie. I thought it was great. It's a 9.5.
Oh,
This is a 9.5.
You short selling son of a gun.
I won't give it
this.
A 10.
What this?
No, I'm not Dave Portnoy, but I'm there. I will give like very few movies 10s.
What could this movie have done more to not deserve it? This was a perfect movie. It is a perfect movie. There's nothing in this movie.
Maybe on a rewatch, I could say that. I can't give it a 10. I can't give it. 10s are saved for
movies that you just talked about. 7 other movies that you thought were great, amazing, and this one was better than all of them, but it was not that much better. I'm not gonna. Don't let me yuck your yum. Dog.
Listen. There are. We're not going to get into the greatest movies of all time debate. This is not one of the greatest movies of all time.
I'm not talking about greatest movies of all time. I'm just saying it's a perfect movie.
Okay, but if I'm going to rate something, but if I'm going to rate something a 10, it's got to be one of the greatest movies of all time. Like there's nothing higher than a 10. I can't give something a 10 unless it's one of the greatest movies of all time.
Okay, that's a whole nother argument because you're going to tell me that there aren't 10 ranked, like 10 rated movies that are better than other 10 rated movies.
No.
Like I don't think that once they hit that 10, they're all equal across the board.
That's
like,
your rating system. Movies that's your flawed rating system. Whatever.
I like it. This should be talked about as one of, or if not the greatest animated movie ever made. Moving forward, it should be in the conversation. If this doesn't win a million awards for cinematography, soundtrack, score, it was so good. It was the big thing that I liked about the original movie, that this movie, like we said earlier, like took what the original movie did. What was really great was it was all original, like how different worlds you're in are, like Gwen Stacy's world. It's like, it feels like the paint is running at all times. Mm-hmm. That they had like the vulture that was from like the Renaissance time, was like they had this paper like 1400s vibe in the middle of her dripping paint world. Yeah. Like the way that they did it's just so original. Mm-hmm. It was like visually stunning.
Yeah.
And like to the ears it was like honey, like the whole movie from start to finish was great. I obviously am giving this a 10.
Well, you have to, because you just shit on me for giving it a 9.5.
I mean, I think in my head the whole time, I'm like, as we were driving home, like they couldn't have done anything in this movie to make it any better. And I can't think of anything in this movie that I was like, ugh, I wish they didn't do that. Or, oh man, I wish they would have had this in it. And I think with a rewatch, just because there's 465 million Spider-Men and women and people in this movie, like that there was bound to be ones that I missed or I didn't see.
Sure.
And I'm like, I'm going to watch the hell out of that movie. I'm going to rewatch the hell out of it. I already know that. So, cool. Okay. 9.5, 10. It's a great movie. Don't take Howie and ours argument as a don't go see it.
It's
go see the movie.
I can't give something a 9.5 and you say that I'm like trying not to get people to go see it. Listen, is it the greatest Spider-Man movie of all time? If it's not, it's super close. It's like right now,
yes.
Like we're not actually ranking the greatest Spider-Man movies. We're not. That wasn't brought up on the list, which I was surprised. But like, I think No Way Home was almost a perfect comic book movie, like with all the Spider-Man and the villains, and like I love that movie so much. I thought it was amazing, right?
Because it did what this movie, the original one of this movie, had already done. bringing in other Spider-Men from Spider-Verses.
No. I mean, yeah. Okay. Listen.
Oh, our top 5 is going to be fun.
Listen. I like No Way Home. I thought it was a great movie. I loved all those characters. Okay, but it didn't bring in a fucking talking pig. Okay, like I get it. It's like the multiverse has like limits. Okay, it's animated. It's different.
I don't like
it's animated.
Spider-Pig.
It's a different genre. It's a different genre. It's animated. It's different stories. Whatever. That had nothing to do with why.
Are you flustered?
Yes, you get me all riled up because you're like just like poking me, like because I gave it a 9.5.
Be professional here.
It might be the best Spider-Man movie of all. It might be the best Spider-Man movie of all time. It's not the greatest comic book movie of all time. As of today, it's not. Okay, it's 9.5. Eat it. It's a 9.5.
What I was telling my brother on the way home was like this movie felt like a comic. If a comic book were a movie, and that's specifically referring to like animation and stuff like that.
Sure.
And like even more so, like throughout the movie when they would say certain like vocab words, they would put a little like comic book thing in the bottom.
Every time a new Spider-Man showed up on screen, they put a little bio, right? Like where it came from. I even thought it was a nice little touch where, and I don't remember if they did this in the first one or not, but like when the production companies like Sony Animation, yada, yada, the comic code symbol came up in the middle of the screen. Did you notice that?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, the little comic code thing that's always on the front of the, that meets the comic code. It like doesn't break the violations, and that came up right in the middle. Yeah, it was neat.
Love that. Well, great movie. I loved it. I had a blast. I'm gonna go see it in theater again probably. So
yeah, definitely.
Should we jump into?
There can be only 5.
Only 5.
With the way this episode's gone so far, headphones are gonna fly off. I'm gonna be running next door, jumping through your window.
This is gonna be a good one. So
do you want me to go first because yours is the one that we think is probably gonna have the most divisiveness, or?
Yeah, because we were texting back and forth yesterday about like going first is getting to have the first word, right? Like,
you'll get to give yours first, but I didn't know if you wanted to do my category first.
Yeah. Let's do that. Let's have a palate cleanser. We'll all calm down a little bit.
Or we're popping our knuckles.
Yeah, all right. Let's do that. Let's jump into yours.
So this week, there can be only 5 in the spirit of Spider-Man, the top 5 greatest Spider-Man villains. Now, this could be video game, comic book, movie, cartoon, whatever you want it to be. I did mine based on characters across all platforms, so I'm given just like one character.
Okay, that's
and how. Too. Yeah, good. So how it encompasses. So I'll start.
As I was going through, I did think about that though. Of do I want to do like certain versions of a certain character? No, I'm just going to do like his
character. Yeah. And again, this is personal lists, right? So this is the way I see things. So not the way.
I think we'll be close on this. I think we'll be close on this one.
Maybe. I'm sure we'll have 3 or 4 that are going to be on it. They're probably just going to be ranked in different places. And that's probably where the argument's going to come on this one. Okay. Number 5, I had J. Jonah Jameson.
Oh, nice. That's
not your traditional Spider-Man villain, but somebody that was a thorn in Spider-Man's side day in and day out in more ways than one. I grew up at Spider-Man was my favorite comic book. I was Amazing Spider-Man, Web of Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man. I had all 3. Amazing Spider-Man, obviously, that was the big one. That was the one I read the most, but I was all about Spider-Man. Probably Spider-Man and X-Men were the comic books I read the most growing up. J. Jonah Jameson is an awesome character, portrayed to perfection in live action. Oh my God. I escaped his name.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, if we're talking about like actors that played a character or just a character themselves, this
Jay
is the
Jonah.
one character that's been played by the same person in like everything ever.
Yeah, and they
J.K. Simmons is his
J.K.
name.
Simmons. That's right. J.K. Simmons was awesome as J. Jonah Jameson in the Tobey Maguire trilogy, and came back in Tom Holland's Universe of No Way
He
Home,
was
which
in
was
the movie we just watched today. He was the J. Jonah
yes, yeah,
Jameson.
yeah, he
So,
was,
and he's
which is
the J.
great.
Jonah Jameson in the video game. Like
Yeah,
he
he
plays
is
them all.
J. Jonah Jameson. He's perfection. He's a great arch rival to Spider-Man,
Yeah,
if you could say.
that's a great villain. I
Yeah.
like that one.
Number 4, and like, man, I read a lot of Daredevil too, so I always kind of thought of him as a Daredevil villain, but through and through, the Kingpin is a Spider-Man villain. He started out in Spider-Man. He's obviously the main villain in the original Spider-Verse movie, but the Kingpin of crime, which he's an awesome bad guy because he's human, but he's super strong, and he pulls all these strings, and he's got this great empire. Man, he's portrayed well too in the Daredevil Netflix show,
so good.
by Vincent D'Onofrio. It's, I mean, just awesome. And then he showed up again in the Hawkeye TV show. I don't know if you got a chance to watch that, but he was awesome in that. Listen,
I'm glad they brought him back though. He deserves it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Michael Clark Duncan, but that was not the role. That was not the Kingpin. So, but yeah, Kingpin is number 4. Number 3, I had Dr. Octopus at number 3. Boy, he's at the top, right? Like, he's one of the biggest Spider-Man villains. I kind of had gotten to the point where I was older and wasn't reading comic books anymore when he even was it Superior Spider-Man, where he took over Spider-Man's body.
Yeah.
Interesting storyline, right? But I loved, we talked about it before, Alfred Molina in live action was fantastic, both in Spider-Man 2 and in No Way Home. Awesome as Dr. Octopus. I even liked Catherine Hahn's version in Spider-Verse, which I thought was great. She was great as Dr. Octopus.
She's great.
Number 2, I just put Norman Osborn. You can call him the Green Goblin. You can call him what you want, but I put Norman Osborn as number 2. He's probably I would say probably the biggest in comic book nemesis to Spider-Man. The Green Goblin he's the one that killed Gwen Stacy. He's, Oscorp and all behind everything. Even in the movies, Willem Dafoe was perfect as Norman Osborn. I loved it. I thought he did a great job.
Awesome job with kind of the duality, dual personality.
And in the comic books, he led up, what was it, the Dark Avengers, even wasn't he Iron Patriot at one point?
That's a great question.
I think Norman Osborn was Iron Patriot at one point too. Like, he's just like this. He's kind of that almost Lex Luthor, in Spider-Man kind of deal, because he's doing all that stuff.
Scientific genius.
Yeah.
I feel like every movie series and every TV series, at some point, revolves around this. That's that's the DNA of Spider-Man and his stories. So
absolutely
love that.
So I had him at number 2. Number 1 for me, personal preference. This is my favorite comic book character growing up. It's Venom. Venom is my number 1. I love Venom. The whole Black Suit Spider-Man storyline in he was I love that comic book line. That Web of Spider-Man was the black suit. He was darker, he was edgier, and
cool.
Yeah, and then we get this whole story where it's a symbiote and it's this alien entity and it becomes Venom. And I put Venom / Eddie Brock because I think Eddie Brock's the
real Venom.
He's the real Venom. I like the movies. I like Tom Hardy as Eddie Brock. I enjoy it. I wish they were R-rated. I wish they were better written.
Yeah.
But they're better than Spider-Man 3.
For sure. For sure. I wish that Yeah, I wish the Venom movies felt more like Spider-Man.
Yeah.
It's just like it feels weird to have
Yeah.
a Venom without Spider-Man. So
Yeah, so I hope that comes about. I still think we have the chance to do that, especially in the MCU with the way they've We've talked about how they've kind of rebooted Tom Holland, where he's your neighborhood Spider-Man, and nobody knows who he is. Doesn't have the armor suit and all that. I think there's a chance we could get that, even though I think Venom is more. I think he's in the Andrew Garfield universe, like from based on everything I've seen, like pieces being put together. Like I think that's the Andrew Garfield version of Spider-Man universe.
I thought that they had like tied it into the Tom Holland Spider-Man universe. I thought
Well, they
that's
did
what they
in a
had done.
post-credit scene where Tom Hardy ends up through the multiverse. He transports. And then he sees Tom Holland on TV, and Venom's like, that's Spider-Man, but it's not like I know him, but it's not the one I know. You ever pick up on that?
I don't remember that.
And then when the multiverse stuff all ends at the end of No Way Home, and they close all the breaches and all the characters coming through, he gets zapped back to where he came from. That's why I think he's from Andrew Garfield's universe, which I'd love to see Andrew Garfield come back for a third movie with Venom in there. That would be pretty cool. So anyway, I Venom number 1.
I love that list. Honestly, love where you had ones on there that I did. You had a ton on there that I did. Yeah, I like your list. Let me jump into mine. 5 was a little bit difficult. I did the classic. There were 2 that I wanted to do, and I went back and forth on them, and I decided I'm going to put them together. So number 5, tied for Spider-Man villains. They're not diabolical. They're not evil geniuses. They don't go out of their way to really give Spider-Man any trouble at all. But I have tied Rhino and Lizard for number 5. When I was a kid, they were cool. I had a Rhino action figure that there was just something cool to me about the Rhino. He's a big dumb idiot in basically every iteration. I am extremely disappointed that they got the great Paul Giamatti to play him, and then they ruined the character by making him be like a mech, like a mechanized.
Not even a good mech.
Yeah,
like it was
so
crap.
Dumb.
Like if you're gonna put him in like a super suit, like at least make him look like the Rhino.
Yeah, yes, like that. That's kind of also why I like him so much, is because he just looks cool. So, and then Lizard obviously is a seminal villain in the Spider-Man universe. When he's Doc Connors, he's a good guy who helps Spider-Man, but he's a bad guy when he turns into Lizard. I actually liked what they did with him in the Andrew Garfield movie. I thought they made him like cool and interesting.
Yep.
And he just he's a cool bad guy. And when I think of Spider-Man, those are 2 bad guys I immediately think of as his main bad guys. And so jumping into number 4, I have Doc Ock. Doc Ock, I feel like, is one of Spider-Man's top villains. Obviously, in Spider-Man 2 of the same Raimi series, that made the character 100 times better than I ever thought. But I liked his version in the 1994 cartoon. Like, I liked his green and yellow costume. That was, I think, when I first saw Spider-Man 2, the movie, I was like annoyed that he wasn't in his like Doc Ock costume.
Spandex.
Like, yeah, I'm all about like, give me the actual.
You are
like,
right. Yeah.
Okay, I see what you did there. I enjoy the characters being in their actual like suits from
as stupid as they would look.
Well, think about this though. As stupid as they would look back in like the 90s when those movies in early 2000s were coming out, X-Men, Spider-Man, I guess with the bad guys, not Spider-Man himself. Like, they didn't want to do the Spanish. They didn't think it would look cool. But then boom, you get the new modern Avengers, Marvel universe. And a lot of those people are in a cool version of the original
suit.
So,
you're right. like X-Men, I think what they did worked. Like they all kind of have matching black leather or whatever. I think like Cyclops would look silly in the blue and yellow. I really do. I think
Yeah.
Wolverine would have looked silly in the blue and yellow. Maybe I'm wrong, but yeah, I think what they did worked. Listen, did you ever see like the original screen test for Green Goblin costume, the Willem Dafoe one, with like the bug
No,
eyes,
I
and it
don't
actually
remember.
looks like a goblin? Like, have
Uh-uh.
you ever seen the original costume?
Mm-mm.
Like, it looks like the Green Goblin
The
from the
Green
comic
Goblin.
books, and it's badass. And like,
Yeah.
that's one where it's like, why did they go with the like armored emerald helmet? You
Yeah.
you had
I
this awesome looking costume. You should have went with it.
I didn't see that. Now I'm gonna go through my list and this will make a lot more sense. But
Yeah,
like
go ahead.
I never looked at Green Goblin. Like when he came out in Spider-Man 1, I actually thought I was like shocked that everyone hated his costume in it. I thought it was cool.
It is
Um
cool. It's just different.
it's very different than what the original is. So my number 3, this is one of the top, like when I think of Spider-Man's main villain, it is this person, but I have 2 other characters I like better.
Mm-hmm.
But Kingpin from the 90s cartoon, he was the main driving villain through all of that. I was super annoyed with the Daredevil movie because one, it
Oh,
was Kingpin was the bad guy and it was for Daredevil and it wasn't for Spider-Man. I know he's a Daredevil bad guy.
mm-hmm.
In live action, he's been Daredevil's main villain more than Spider-Man.
Right.
But Spider-Man is who I feel like is who he's actually the bad guy for.
He premiered in Spider-Man comics. Like, yeah, that's where
Yes.
Kingpin came from.
When every Sunday when we would get a newspaper back in the day, I know for you young youths, you don't know what that is, but there's a newspaper that comes daily. Well, actually, it doesn't anymore, but
Right.
on Sundays they had a huge comic section, and there was always like a 4 to 5 panel Spider-Man comic, and it was always like Spider-Man fighting the Kingpin. So the Spider-Man video game from 2018, Sony Spider-Man, it opens up with like you fighting Kingpin in like the very first level, and it looks just like from the original cartoon, and it like it filled my heart. It made my heart happy. So okay, jumping in number 1 and 2. This was another one that it was difficult to decide who was 1 and who was 2. They went back and forth. But this was very, very like if this is number 1, that number 2 is like right there. Number 2 for me for Spider-Man, Hobgoblin. I freaking loved Hobgoblin.
I loved Hobgoblin too. I almost had him on my list.
He's such a like when I think of the Goblin bad guys, I know we've seen Green Goblin in every movie series ever, and even the newer cartoons. But like Hobgoblin was like my goblin growing up. When I think of like hoverboard riding, freaking bomb throwing goblins, it was that. Might have to do with Mark Hamill voiced him in the cartoon, so he basically was the same voice as the Joker. But Hobgoblin is so awesome. I always think of him when they are rebooting a show or a movie. My immediate thought is like, please put Hobgoblin in it. I don't think they'll ever put him in any of the live action stuff ever. He's too like, I feel like they think you have to have the Green Goblin before you can have the Hobgoblin, and like the series never go long enough for that to happen. But it's a travesty that the Hobgoblin is not in any kind of live action stuff, or even brought back for any of the newer cartoons. He literally lives. What were you saying?
He gets referenced in No Way Home because Ned Leeds at one point became the Hobgoblin, and they kind of talk about like him turning into a bad guy.
They did that because like when the originals or when the first Tom Holland Spider-Man came out and Ned was in it, like that was the first thing that everyone was like, wait, that guy's going to be the Hobgoblin, or he was the Hobgoblin at one point. So I feel like they had to sprinkle that in as like kind of a, like, yeah, we know you all know that. But
Hobgoblin's been played by like, he's like
by
5 different
people.
a bunch of different guys. Yeah.
Yes. Which was a big part of his character in the cartoon and in the comic, was that it was a mystery of who he was, and that's what made it interesting. Also very Joker-like. So Hobgoblin number 2, put him in a freaking movie, somebody. Put him in Andrew Garfield's world. Number 1, this was the coolest villain / Spider-Man character right next to Spider-Man. I love this. I wanted every action figure of him ever. Venom, number 1 Spider-Man villain. I freaking loved Venom as a kid growing up. There was just something so cool about him. I agree that Eddie Brock Venom is who Venom is and should be. They totally screwed him up in Spider-Man 3 with Topher Grace.
Oh,
what a travesty.
That might be one of the worst casting decisions ever.
I think of Venom, I think of like massive, giant, like burly Hulk-sized Spider-Man-esque. And he's got to be a bad guy. Bad guy Venom. He should be Spider-Man's bad guy. He's a great villain in the cartoon because he's basically like bigger, badder, stronger, scarier Spider-Man. And in like the late 2000s, it's kind of, he had like the Harley Quinn effect. Like everyone liked him so much that they were like, well, we need to do more of him. And so let's turn him into an anti-hero. Instead of being a villain like they are, let's make him an anti-hero. And then that's my biggest gripe with the the Tom Hardy movies is he's not a bad guy. And like Venom is a bad guy. And he also the reason why his character is so interesting is because he was at kind of the seed level of when Spider-Man and Peter Parker, like they went to school together, they know each other. One, picked on the other, then one got, powers and became strong and did the right thing. And the other one ended up getting his own kind of bad, same thing, but was a bad guy with it. And so there's like a lot of that kind of tension and dynamic between them in the cartoon and in a lot of the comics. So I like bad guy Venom. Like I don't
agree.
If they continue with the Tom Hardy stuff and they actually make it in the Spider-Man world, that's the other big gripe with Tom Hardy's Venom is like it's in San Francisco. It's not even in New York. He's not swinging through this. He does zero Spider-Man swinging. And that is something that he does.
Because he was never Spider-Man.
Correct. But yeah, so that's my list. Nice. There was one more thing I was going to say, but I can't remember. That's my list. We both had Venom at number 1, clearly.
I was surprised. I'm surprised that we both did. I honestly, because I had him, I moved him around. He was in 2, he was at 3, and then I was like, I got to put him at 1. He's my guy. I love him.
Yeah. Were you surprised it didn't have Green Goblin in there?
A little bit. I thought you would have had him towards the bottom of the list, but you liked Hobgoblin better. I don't disagree with that either. Hobgoblin, I think, in some of the the books I read in the 90s, I saw a lot more Hobgoblin too. And I did text you the picture, by the way, the original map.
I saw. You text me, and when I first saw it, was like, "Oh, do I have like a booger on my face or something?" Oh yeah, that does look awesome.
It's awesome. I wish they would have done that.
They should have done that. Well, I wonder would that have been like? Would it have moved, or would it have been like his helmet, where it just stays in one spot the whole time?
Either way, it would have looked cooler.
It's a good point. What was the other thing I was going to say? Like they did a whole Venom comic series where he basically is like the Punisher. Like they give him guns and he's got like
Agent Venom. Yeah. Wasn't that Flash Thompson even? Wasn't that like Spider-Man?
Yeah.
High school bully was anti.
Get the fuck out of here.
Agent Venom.
Yeah. I don't need any of that. So
no, I mean they brought there's all the different symbiotes now, right? Like there's anti-Venom and there's I don't know. There's so many of
Carnage
them.
And all that stuff.
Well, Carnage, like when it was Venom and Carnage, I was like, this is awesome. Like these two guys are great. I didn't even mind like when it was like Spider-Man had to team up with Venom to defeat Carnage. I was good with that.
Yeah.
But then let Venom go back to being a bad guy and eating people's brains. Like let's just go back. Like I thought that was a cool storyline. Keep it. Keep Venom the bad
Yeah.
guy.
But don't make him now all of a sudden a good guy. I agree. Like they have
Yeah.
a common enemy, so he'll go from being a bad guy to a good guy to take out their common enemy, but he's not. That doesn't mean all of a sudden he's Captain America. So
Right.
cool. All right, let's jump into the next only 5 list that we already know. We are going to, I don't think claws out. I don't think we're not going to argue. I think I think it all revolves around one person.
It's fine.
But this
I know
list
who you're talking about too. I know who you don't like, so it's
for
fine.
sure. I'll talk about it.
All right.
This list was great because it was nice to like dive in of like all the different Spider-Mans that are out there and like all the different versions. This top 5 list is the top 5 Peter Parker / Spider-Man. That's comics, video games, movies, TV show. Like I said earlier, like if we were just doing the best Spider-Man ever, after seeing the Across the Spiderverse today, it would be difficult not to have him in the top 5 because I just really enjoy the new Miles Morales.
Yep.
But this is just Peter Parker and Spider-Man. So I'm going to start with my honorable mentions before I jump in my top 5. First honorable mention, Chris Pine.
Nice.
Very, very, very short-lived Spider-Man.
He's the all-American guy.
Simple, but he was like the exact original classic Spider-Man vibes. Like they did a great job of. He was barely in the movie as a character, but then his character very much like was an overarching like factor of a lot of the movie and the city and Miles Morales and how he did his stuff. I just really like Chris Pine. I think like they could totally do a spinoff like Chris Pine movie or short in the Spider-Verse like world. And I would like that. I would be totally fine with going and watching more of him just doing like basic normal Spider-Man stuff. My second honorable mention, Tom Holland. Great. I like Spider-Man. I like him. I like him because he's
clearly not.
I like him because he is he's like teenage version of Tom Holland. But here is why Tom Holland is not in the top 5, or at least not yet, because he has only been like the actual Peter Parker Spider-Man that we all know and love for the last 10 minutes of the last movie, where they take everything away, they wipe everybody's mind, and now you've got classics.
I disagree.
Okay, we'll disagree when you get to your list. He finally gets his classic blue and red at the end. He finally loses everyone. Nobody knows who he is. He's poor. He's, for like the first time ever actually in New York City, shocking to have Spider-Man swinging around New York. And yes, I know Queens is New York, but he still does zero Spider-Manning in any of those movies. The first movie, they're in Washington, D.C. Basically, it felt
they're in Washington, D.C. for like 15 minutes of that movie.
Basically, it felt like for all of those movies, it was, how cool would it be if we did Spider-Man in a different, in Washington, D.C. or in Europe or in space? Like, that's all cool. But like, you basically are doing like older version, Avengers version of Spider-Man at the beginning. It's kind of like how they did Batman versus Superman, where like Superman and Batman hate each other the first time they meet, which the reason why that storyline is so important and seminal is because they have had a career of being best friends and teammates. And then when they're 45, they come back and they fight because one puts their foot down in the sand. That, like, there's a whole bunch of stuff that is, I think Tom Holland could be one of the best Spider-Man if they give him an actual Spider-Man movie where he's doing Spider-Man things like swinging around New York City, fighting classic villains. I did like the most recent one because they had him fighting some classic villains, but they, of course, were having him fight classic villains from the other Spider-Man movies. Like, I'm not saying that he can't be, but in my strong opinion, he has yet to do a single actual Spider-Man movie where he's doing like comic book Spider-Man things. The things that he does that I think are comic book accurate is the one, he's like a space case airhead teenager who can't keep up with doing the things that he's supposed to do, balancing lots of stuff. They did a really good job with that. I don't like that he gets his Spider-Man costume from Tony Stark. His first costume is it's an Iron Man suit that's painted like Spider-Man. Like all that stuff, just for me, I am a classic Spider-Man. I like the
You're
classic
still on your
story.
honorable mentions. Will you get going?
Sorry. I know that's where this whole
You already shushed me, so I'm going to shut up.
I didn't shush you.
You shushed me.
I just meant I knew that you were going to immediately jump in because I know your number one is Tom Holland. Tom Holland is not the number one Spider-Man.
It's not number one. I don't have my number one.
I do like Tom Holland. I like Teenage Spider-Man, but he's not my top 5. I'll stop there. And all you Marvel recency bias Avengers is the greatest movie. Kevin Feige goggles. You're all wrong. Number 5. This episode was going to be a lot shorter, and now I've made it a lot longer.
Your honorable mentions 12 minutes.
Number 5. Well, I really needed to have that talk. I've been holding that on my chest and my shoulders for years, and I finally got to.
I don't even feel like you saw the end of Homecoming. Like the Vulture's not a classic Spider-Man villain. Like he wasn't like doing it in sweatshirt. He didn't have a Spider-Man suit.
He's had 5 fucking movies, and he's fought one of his own actual Spider-Man villains.
Mysterio.
And the Vulture. I also will say they did Mysterio much better than he was in the cartoons. They made him a lot cooler than he was in the other ones. I know you're trying to think right now of all the other main characters that he fought.
No, I'm good.
Okay, here we go. We'll keep going. I know your number 1 or number 2 is Tom Holland, or he's both. Number 5, Josh Keaton. There was 2 seasons of the oh my God, I'm so flustered now. I can't even remember the name of the damn series. The 2008 Spectacular Spider-Man cartoon. I don't know if you watched these cartoons, but they were fucking awesome. A lot of people say that the Spectacular Spider-Man is like the most Spider-Man media there is. A lot of people have that ranked as like the number 1 animated Spider-Man ever. The opening music for that episode or that show was actually awesome too. But the Peter Parker in there, it's incredible. There's 2 seasons. They're like 13 episodes each, so you could hammer it out in literally like 2 days. If you like Spider-Man, if you like the original 1994 Spider-Man, you'll love it. Yeah, it's my number 5. Number 4, tough to say his name, but Yuri Lowenthal, the Spider-Man 2018 video game. I don't know if you played the Sony video game. I didn't shush you. You're allowed to talk, Howard.
No, I'm good. Carry on.
Okay, so this is how our episode is going to end. The PlayStation 4 video game, Sony Spider-Man, they came out with like a second DLC, and now they've just announced number 2 that's coming out, which I was going to mention in my 6 to Midnight. The new Sony Spider-Man that's coming out. It's going to be like Grand Theft Auto 5. You can switch back between Miles Morales and Peter Parker at any moment. But he did an awesome job. He like really captured. It was like, it felt like playing Spider-Man 2 all over again, but brand new. And like the story was great. He was awesome. There's spoiler, I guess. Mary Jane ends up dying at the end, and like he just does a great job of horribly balancing 10 spinning plates at once, and like loses the people that he loves. And Yuri, just like his voice felt like Spider-Man. He does a great job with like kind of the nerdy, smart, techie. He works for Doc Ock, and like that's a big part of the whole game as the story's going on, because he's not bad guy Doc Ock yet, and he just does an awesome job. Okay, number 3, and I know I'm going to get barbecued for this one, but I do not care. Number 3, Andrew Garfield. I freaking loved that Spider-Man series. I know it gets a ton of bad, like a bad rap, but he, I think, was the best actor out of all of them. Like, he just did a great job of making you feel like, again, I've talked on like every episode about like carrying loss and grief and how you handle yourself and stuff like that. And that movie, he just does a fantastic job making you feel like he's carrying the grief on his shoulders with every decision he makes.
I agree.
Like, there's a scene where Aunt May, he's like struggling, he's trying to get his words out, and Aunt May, I can't remember the particular thing that she says, but it's like super powerful. It totally makes me tear up every time I see it. It's just, he does a really great job. I love that they didn't go the Mary Jane route in that series. They went the Gwen Stacy kind of love interest, and him and what's her name?
Emma Stone.
Emma Stone. Why was I thinking Rose? Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield have like electric chemistry on screen,
and it was because it was real,
for sure. But I loved like it was the classic Spider-Man going back and forth. Like,
yes.
I love you, but I can't be with you. I'm not going to be with you. The other side that I really liked about him is in the opening scene of the second movie, when he's chasing the freaking classic, armored car thing, and he's trying to stop it, he's like throwing these little comic book quips in like every 5 seconds. And there's one point where he's sitting with his feet are hanging down on the driver's side window, and he like pops his head down to like talk some shit and then get out of the way. Like, that felt like Spider-Man. That beginning of the second movie, that's my favorite on-screen Spider-Man costume. Google it, go look at it. I didn't really like his original costume, like the yellow eyes I thought were kind of weird. But in the second movie, I loved it. I really enjoyed him as Spider-Man. So I know everyone hates him as Spider-Man, but I thought he was great. And then top 2. I actually don't have my number 1 very close. Number 1 is like light years ahead, but I could not put this top high at the list just based on kind of my upbringing. These movies were incredible. Tobey Maguire. I loved the movies. We were texting the other day about like, it's a bummer that number 3 was it was just such like a different direction from the original 2.
Yes.
But I think a lot of people don't look fondly on that whole trilogy as
because
much
the third
as
one
they
was so
would.
bad.
Because the third one was so bad. So if the third one was better, or they just didn't make the third one, if they just did like Andrew Garfield style and just did the 2, I think people would look at that movie as I thought those series as being awesome. I liked his like, in number 1, he definitely feels like a dork who would never be athletic, who couldn't tie his own shoes. And then he turns into like this super jacked, like, holy like you get the vibe of like, if a nerd just got superpowers and all of a sudden was athletic, he still wouldn't know how to tie his shoes. Like, you still kind of get that vibe.
Yep.
They do an awesome job of like the swinging through the city Spider-Man, like going through New York. Number 2, obviously we've talked about, is one of my favorite comic book movies of all time.
Yep.
One of my top Marvel. His Spider-Man is great. My number 1 Spider-Man. This Spider-Man is Spider-Man. When you think of Spider-Man, when I think of Spider-Man, this is who I think of. Christopher Daniel Barnes, 1994 Spider-Man, the animated series. This show was everything to me. I watched this show more than I watched Batman, the animated series, because it was on more. And because I think my parents maybe thought that Batman was a little bit more scary, because I watched this all the time. I can remember like I had a lot of cool action figures as a kid, but my favorite action figure was my McDonald's Spider-Man that I got in my Happy Meal, like just the classic cartoon Spider-Man toy. The guy, Christopher Daniel Barnes, his voice is like, it's kind of like, um, it just, when I think of Spider-Man, his voice is who I think of for it. It like, looking back on the show now, if you go back and watch it, it's kind of all over the place. I do appreciate that they kind of keep storylines going through, but like he just does it. He does a great job of being Peter Parker, of, you know, obviously being Spider-Man, balancing the I can't do all things at once. I never get the girl. He ends up marrying Mary Jane, but it feels like he's like never able to get things done or be places on time. But his like Spider-Man is cool. The battles are awesome, especially for how much censorship was on that show, where they weren't allowed to have like any fighting and like one punch an episode, like things that people don't really think about.
Right.
Or like guns, they did like space, like laser guns in that show. Not a lot of people remember because of censorship stuff. That show was like the poster child for like finding ways to get around censorship. Anyways, love his Spider-Man. Like truly, he should voice Spider-Man in anything that's not live action, like for the rest of time, and I would be happy. He is my number one Spider-Man and Peter Parker. All right. Roast me. It's my 45-minute soapbox.
I'm not going to roast you. I'm not going to shush you. I'm not going to roast you.
I didn't mean to shush you.
You shushed me, and I
just wanted to talk about Tom Holland not being in the top 5. That's all.
It's fine. Yeah, your honorable mention was longer than your list. Listen, so when it comes to Spider-Man, like this is going to show our age difference, okay? Because I like 94. I wasn't watching Spider-Man the animated series.
Oh man,
I didn't watch it.
Right.
I didn't watch a lot of Spider-Man cartoons, not until I was watching them with my kids, to be honest with you. So a lot of what I had to base mine around was movies. And so that's where the most of mine's going to come from. So
cool.
I had one TV show on here, and it's at number 5. And I had Drake Bell at number 5 because of Spider-Man, Ultimate Spider-Man, the TV series that was on Disney XD. It ran from 2012 to 2017, so I got to watch it with Reagan. I got to watch it with Des. You can watch it on Disney Plus. It's actually a really good show. It ties in with the Avengers shows, Hulk, Agents of Smash. Des and I used to watch that all the time. So whenever Spider-Man was on there, it was the ultimate version, the Drake Bell version of Spider-Man. So like that was.
I didn't realize that was Drake Bell.
It is, and Drake Bell's he's a skis.
That's what I was just about to say.
He's got some legal troubles. Apparently, he shouldn't be doing kid shows. But
he's very Ezra Miller.
Yeah. Well. Ezra Miller. I feel like there's hope for Ezra Miller because he's like he's doing some crazy stuff. He probably just needs help. Drake Bell needs to go to jail. Like that's
a fact.
That's
anyways
a little too creepy. He's on the Army Hammer scale. That's where Drake Bell's at.
He's eating people. That show was like the Spectacular Spider-Man. They basically were like trying to, because there was some licensing things and new ownership of like stuff, so they'd switched it over. But that was so good, they wanted to kind of keep that Spider-Man going. That's where that.
Yeah, and when I was actually looking at it too, I didn't know, but he did the video game Marvel Heroes. He did the voice in that, and then he also did the Disney Infinity Spider-Man voices for the video games. So I didn't know that, nice. So I thought that was interesting as well. So I had number 5. Number 4, this was one I threw in, and after tonight, I'm glad I put him on here because I really enjoyed his portrayal, even though it's so off the wall, as I put Jake Johnson.
Yes.
I like Jake Johnson's Peter Parker. I know the bathrobe and sweatpants thing it's annoying.
It's super annoying.
But his, like, the whole training Miles Morales thing and all that, and like it really like solidified in the new movie too, because he talks about like, I wouldn't be where I'm at in my life if it wasn't for you, to talking to Miles and stuff. And so I really like Jake Johnson's portrayal. I like Jake Johnson anyway. I think he's hilarious.
Yeah,
And
hilarious.
I like the way he plays kind of this off the wall, kind of almost quirky Peter Parker. And I think it works, because you
I
basically,
love
you
that.
go from the beginning of that movie, you get Chris Pine's all-American hero, Peter
Yeah.
Parker. And then you
It's
get
like,
Jake Johnson's like, fuck up Peter
yeah,
Parker.
like
And it's,
pizza and beer belly
yes, yeah.
Parker.
And so I like that. I like that portrayal. So,
I love that. I love that.
so you know who my top three are going to be. Okay. So
Yeah,
it's,
I
it's
do
our,
know
it's
who they
our,
are.
it's our movie Spider-Man. When I wrote this list, I moved them. They were all got moved around. This evolved multiple times this week after we decided we were doing this one. I sent you a picture today, and it's the horse.
Yeah, yeah, it's great.
You ever see like the horse drawings, and like it starts off real
Mhm.
crappy, and then it's fire, right? And this one's
Yeah.
all fire. It's all fire, and it's Miles, and it's Tom Holland, it's Andrew Garfield's Tobey Maguire.
Mhm.
I feel very blessed with the Spider-Man that we've been given for big screen movies. Very much so. Like I feel like we've been blessed with the Batmans we've been given. You and I had this discussion, I think, after we recorded last week, where it was like Christian Bale and Michael Keaton are like 1A and 1B. Like
Mhm.
it's almost like, what day is it? Like today, I think Christian Bale's better. Like today, I
Yeah,
think Michael
yeah.
Keaton's better. And that's kind of the way I am with Spider-Man. So it took me a while to solidify my top three. And so this is evolved multiple times.
Mhm.
At number three, I have Tom Holland. And I have Tom Holland at number three because of the reasons that you said. Okay. And that's what I wanted to talk about when you shushed me, was that I understand your point. We got glimpses of Tom Holland as the neighborhood Spider-Man in Homecoming, when he like has to fight the Vulture at the end. He's on his own. Like he's, Tony
Yeah.
Stark's abandoned him, taken the suit away. He's like in his sweatpants. He's in his original homemade suit. I like the segment where he's at in Captain America Civil War. I like all of that, where it builds up to Spider-Man, where he's this goofy, quirky teenage kid. He gets recruited. Here's this fancy ass suit, like all that. And they explain that at the beginning of Homecoming. I like Tom Holland as Spider-Man. I'm with you. I want to see more. I want that next movie as the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, where it's just him
Yeah.
as Spider-Man. I would
Yeah.
love to see, because they like putting in other characters in these movies, right? That's obvious. Obviously he had Iron Man, right? At the beginning.
Mhm.
Iron Man's dead. Doctor Strange, right? In the No Way Home, which was okay. I liked it.
Mhm.
I like Benedict as Doctor Strange. Don't get me wrong. I think he was a good casting decision for that character.
Yeah.
I would love to see the next Spider-Man be about Spider-Man with maybe a cameo from Charlie Cox's Daredevil. I would love that so much. This like heroes on the street in New York.
Yes.
That would be fantastic, because that's what I think Spider-Man and Daredevil, like I related with them so much when I read comic books as a kid, because they were so like fighting these guys in the neighborhood. Now, Spider-Man is not Daredevil. Daredevil is basically a guy that has enhanced senses, right? Like
Mhm.
that's who Daredevil is. Spider-Man has like one of the strongest characters Marvel has.
Yeah.
He's all that. So him becoming like what you said, like he evolved into this Avenger and like these super suits and all that, because Spider-Man grew up and evolved into that. That's because
Yeah.
he's so powerful as a character. So Tom Holland's number three.
I agree with if there was going to be another character with him, that character makes the most sense. One, because
Mhm.
that version of Daredevil was freaking awesome. But two, that superhero is in New York, Hell's Kitchen, and
Mhm.
he's in a lot of
Spider-Man's
Spider-Man
comics.
stuff already. Like he's in
Mhm.
his comics, he's in his video games.
Well, I think that's
he's
why
in,
everybody, like when we talked about Kingpin, like he's a Daredevil villain. Well, it's because he's
in the
in New
same city.
York. It's
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
how it is. That those are the two guys that are fighting him all the time.
Yeah. So I think that would actually, I would watch that. I would totally watch it.
So number one and number two, I'm going to give you at the same time, and this is why, because it's close. And I like Toby had the better movies. He's number two. Andrew Garfield's number one.
Oh, yes.
Andrew Garfield
Yes.
portrayed Spider-Man better than anybody else on the big screen as Peter Parker. He portrayed that character almost to perfection. Like when we talk about Batman, we're like, yeah, Christian Bale was great Bruce Wayne. He was great Batman, and when we talked about Robert Pattinson, we were like, he was great Batman. He didn't really he wasn't Bruce Wayne at all.
Yeah.
Andrew Garfield was Peter Parker. Like he is Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Like everything you said when you had him at number 3, and you were talking about how you thought you were going to get crap because you had him at number 3. I had him at number 1.
Well,
Like,
I did say he I love that you won. I love that you have him at your number 1. He was the one that I'm like, I know I'm going to get a lot of crap. I want to put him at number 1 in terms of like movie Spider-Man. He does the character like you
the
said.
best.
He is Spider-Man. So
his problem was his 2 movies were the worst.
Yeah.
Other than Tobey's 3rd movie, but Tobey's first 2 movies are great. Like we've talked about, Spider-Man 2 is epic. It's one of the greatest movies, comic book movies ever. His origin story movie, like you just talked about, like you bought that he was a skinny ass nerd that got these powers, and now all of a sudden he's changing, he's evolving, and Tobey does a great job of handling like the should I be Spider-Man, should I not? Do I want to deal with this responsibility? Like the throwing away the costume, like all Tobey was like nailed that. Everything about that as the character. But Andrew Garfield, like you said, the emotional toll, like the ending of Amazing Spider-Man 2, like it's not a great movie. That ending where she dies is just, it's gut-wrenching. You believe in your heart that he is now broken.
Yes.
And as shitty as that scene with Paul Giamatti is at the end, but when he shows back up and that little kid's like ready to fight Rhino on his own because of what Spider-Man means, Andrew Garfield like
rubs his head, and he
as excited as when No Way Home came out and they were, they to talk to Tobey, are you in the new Spider-Man? He talked to Andrew Garfield because Andrew Garfield was making, I think that was when like his Netflix movie that he was nominated for a bunch of awards for, the one where he played the guy that wrote Rent. You know what I'm talking about? Was it called Click Click Boom? Is that what it was called?
I think so. Sure, but I know what you're talking about.
He was doing like press junket for that, and like, hey, are you in the new Spider-Man? And he's like, no, I'm not. I wish I was. I'm not. Nobody's called me. That was awesome because I was more excited to see him than I was Tobey Maguire because Andrew Garfield was the best Spider-Man. Even though
I love that.
If I ranked the Spider-Man movies, it's Tobey Maguire's Tobey Maguire's 3rd movie would be last.
Yeah.
And then it would be the 2 Amazing Spider-Man movies. Like that's where they would rank him out of all those live action movies. So he was dealt, we talked about this, like I feel like Val Kilmer wasn't a bad Batman, but that movie wasn't as good.
Yeah, that's a good point.
If Val Kilmer would have been in a better Batman movie, would he be portrayed better? Like Michael Keaton's 2 Batman movies were perfect, almost. Christian Bale's 3 Batman movies were almost perfect. The second one might be.
Yeah.
That's where I think Andrew Garfield didn't get a fair shake.
Dude, yes. I wish they would let him keep going. Like I wish they didn't pull the rug out from under him.
They can. If they want to, they can.
And they should.
They've opened that window.
I thought I was going to want to kill you with this list, and now I know now why we're friends, because I talk about those amazing I mean, I know like you were just saying that the movies aren't good themselves, but because of like how good Andrew Garfield is at playing Spider-Man, I really like those movies. Number 2 especially. I know a lot of people don't like the Electro character, but I actually
I thought it was badly done because of the way Electro's written in the comics is totally different than he is in that movie, and it's bad.
See, I just thought like his Electro in the comics and like the cartoon, he's this week's villain or whatever they said in the new Spider-Man. Like he just is boring, and I felt like this was like there's ways to take a villain and try to do something totally different and original where it works. And there's a way to try to do something totally different and original, and it doesn't work. And both in one movie, Paul Giamatti's Rhino, let's do a mechanized Rhino.
Yeah.
No, doesn't work. I actually really liked the Jamie Foxx one. I liked how they had kind of the like dubstep reverb kind of music vibe with him. Clearly they thought he was good enough or cool enough to put him in kind of the newer movies, right?
Well,
Like
they
he
made
was
him.
in the
They
new movies. So
made him a lot cooler. He
well,
looks.
go
He
back and
looks.
watch the movie then.
Oh, but I
Oh,
just.
I see what you're saying. Like just in like visually what he
Yeah,
looked like.
yeah. They made him look a lot cooler. Like they made him look. There's even a joke where the lizard's like, "Why aren't you blue anymore?" And then like it just they cut away. Like they make like a little inside joke of it, like because it was so dumb that he looked blue.
Yeah.
A Dane DeHaan's Green Goblin is a completely throwaway character. I mean,
horrible. I was just about to say that. I was just about to say he's probably next to Topher Grace. He's probably like one of the worst characters.
It was pretty bad. It was pretty
terrible.
bad.
His hair. He needs to just stick to that one indie superhero movie
Chronicle
that we love so much. Chronicle.
That was good.
Man, he was good. Which I guess makes sense why they would want to make him Harry Osborn because
I didn't have a problem with him as Harry Osborn at all. I didn't like the Goblin, and I don't know why you had the Green Goblin in Tobey Maguire's first movie, right? You have flashbacks of him in the second movie. He becomes the Green Goblin in the third movie. So you're going to reboot the franchise with Andrew Garfield, and then the second movie you're going to bring back the Green Goblin? Like,
yeah, yes. That's why I said he's in it's his story arc is in
stupid.
everything.
It's like you look at like superhero rogues galleries, right? Like we could all probably agree Batman is the best, right? Spider-Man has a pretty awesome rogues gallery.
Yeah.
Like especially at the top. You get kind of when you get
to number 2 for sure.
Yeah, when you get to
Batman and Spider-Man.
I agree. When you get to the Vultures and the Electros and the Blizzards and like they're all around the same level.
Yeah, they all meld together.
They kind of do. I think like Doc Ock and Norman Osborn are at the top, and then they kind of just meld together. Venom's obviously the best. We both agreed to that. And then they all kind of meld together. Like I even Mysterio, like I know he's kind of up there. Scorpion. They all Kraven the Hunter is kind of his own deal, but they all kind of meld together. Why are you using the Green Goblin again? Like, I mean, that's what I'm getting at. Like, why are you using him again? This isn't
when you have all that at your fingertips.
This isn't Batman and the Joker. Spider-Man and the Green Goblin are not Batman and the Joker. It's not the same, right?
Yeah.
There was a lot of like, why are we using the Joker so much? That's different.
Yeah.
It's like Superman and Lex Luthor. Like, Lex Luthor has to be a part of a Superman story in somewhere in there, right?
I'll give credit to Tom Holland's Spider-Man movies because they did go with the Vulture as like that first bad guy, which has not been in any movies at all. He technically was in the Sam Raimi universe, but it was the video game. It was Spider-Man 1, the video game. But like he wasn't in those movies. And then Mysterio obviously has not been in a movie either. I do think they did a good job with Mysterio taking kind of a storyline that's in the 1990s cartoon and made it like cool and put it in the movie. So I'll give them that. And they made him way cooler in the show. Did you watch the 89 X-Men cartoon?
Yes.
If you love that X-Men cartoon, you would love, actually, I don't know if it was 89. I don't know. I think it's sooner than that, or like 90 something. Because they're doing a remake of it.
Yeah, they're doing a sequel series. It's a sequel.
Yes. So if you liked that, they're the same because they did a lot of crossovers. In the Spider-Man, they do a lot of Avengers and X-Men. But like, man, honestly, man, you got to go back and watch some episodes of the animated series Spider-Man because it's freaking good.
And that was the thing. Like, again, this is back to our age. Like, I was watching X-Men, Batman the animated series. Then like by the time Spider-Man, I think Spider-Man came on, like you said, I think it was 94, 95.
Yeah.
By that time,
you had moved on.
I'm watching Cinemax on Friday nights, in the basement.
Gross.
We called it Skinemax.
Gross. And look at you now, 12 a.m. and back in your basement on a Friday night. Like
yeah, I have the internet
things
on my
never
phone.
change.
So
Okay, well, honestly, I thought this was going to be a war. Maybe I went into it a little bit more aggressive with the
you
Tom
did.
Holland
You
thing.
went in aggressive.
I said, texted you, was like, I have Jedi, The Last Jedi, like passion about kind of, and it just so happened that as I was scrolling YouTube, of course, like my phone reads our minds and hears our words. And so like there was like a quick short of a top 5 Spider-Man, and this like 16-year-old narrator was like, obviously Tom Holland is the number 1 Spider-Man, but let's look at some of the other Spider-Mans. And I was like, what?
Listen,
Get out of here.
This goes back to what I said at the beginning when I gave you my top 3. They're not, none of those 3 are bad. We didn't have a bad Spider-Man. They cast them very well, all 3. Like the thing that Andrew Garfield portrayed Spider-Man the best. Tobey Maguire was a great Spider-Man. Everybody bought it. Like he was great. The thing that Tom Holland does is Tom Holland plays that young Spider-Man. He has that like innocent persona, and he's got that background. He can do all those flips and stuff on his own. Like he's a like acrobat, like dancer. Like he was doing Billy Elliot when he was a freaking kid. Yeah. That's Tom Holland. You said this. Could Tom Holland be at the top of this list someday? Yeah, he could. There's no doubt about it. Like it's a possibility. He's made 3 movies. His 3 movies versus the Tobey Maguire 3 movies, Tom Holland's got the better 3 movies overall because they're all good. Right? We talked about that 3rd movie shit the bed so hard. Andrew Garfield had 2 not great movies. Like, listen, they're not bad. You and I had this discussion a long time ago where you even said, you're like, go back and watch them. And I did. This was before No Way Home came out. I said I wanted to watch all of them because I know these 2 guys are going to be in this movie. I don't care what anybody says. I went back and I watched all the Spider-Mans. Both Amazing Spider-Man movies I enjoy. They're the 2 out of the 3 worst. Like it's we've gone over that, but Tom Holland could be there.
He could. I like they did the high school Spider-Man because for a long part of Spider-Man's comic book world, like he's a high school kid. That like the Josh Keaton 2008 Spectacular Spider-Man cartoon show, he is a high schooler, like trying out for the football team and like trying to not be Spider-Man, like the world's greatest athlete, and like making the football team and not like. So that's the one thing about the Tom Holland thing that I like. But the thing that I hated about it was that they had him in that age, but then they literally skipped like his whole career to like the last part. It's like we started at the end, at the beginning.
You're right. I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying. I think with what Marvel's plan was, they because of where they introduced him. Yeah. And that has to do with studios and rights more than anything. If Marvel had the rights to Spider-Man in 2010, Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And then now we have the seasoned vet in Infinity
doing all this same stuff. Yeah.
Correct. And then we buy it because that's who Spider-Man is. Sony had the rights. They didn't want to share them. Marvel signed this deal with them. They made a deal with Sony. Said, listen, we want him in the universe. He's too important. Let's make this movie. You guys get all the money. Basically is what they said, because we want Spider-Man. We fund it together. We get our money back. You get the profits. Deal. Let's do it.
Yeah.
We all get Spider-Man.
That like obviously the newest Tom Holland Spider-Man movie was like it. Everyone loved it because it brought back Toby, it brought back Andrew. That was awesome. But why I liked that way more than any of the other Tom Holland one was because just like the movie we watched tonight, the Across the Spiderverse, he finally had like his canon moment where like he lost Mary Jane, and that was the loss. Like Spider-Man is someone who carries grief and loss on his shoulders, and that he finally had that.
Well, he loses Aunt May.
That's what I meant. Who did I say?
You said Mary Jane.
I meant.
Well, he does lose her
say
at the end too. He loses her at the end too, just in a different way.
For sure. I meant when he loses Aunt May, like when
he gets
she
his Uncle
dies,
Ben
like
moment.
Yes, he gets his canon moment. Where like it's not a joke anymore. It's not fun anymore. It's like now people have died, and he, like, all that sets in, and that's what brings the other Spider-Man close to him, because it's like, yeah, bro, like,
and he's like, I'm gonna kill the Green Goblin because he took everything away from me. And
but
he has his I can't do that, I'm Spider-Man moment, and Tobey Maguire gets him there. You know, in that scene where he's about to stab Willem Dafoe, and Tobey Maguire just he grabs that glider and stares at him. Doesn't have to say a word, just the way he looks at him. And Tom Holland's like, I'm Spider-Man. I can't. This is not who I am.
Great point. Way to loop back to what we talked about earlier. Also, talking about a moment or a scene without talking, when Andrew Garfield saves Mary Jane, and as she's falling, and we all knew, like, this happened to him before, where he lost Gwen, and he saves her, and it's like a big deal to him.
And she's has to say anything. She's like, "Oh, thank you so much," and he's just like, you can just see it in his face.
Like it crushes him. Like, God, that was awesome.
Those are those moments. Like, those are the moments. That's why I like that movie so much. It's that stuff. It's how Marvel does such a great job. And then again, we talk about Endgame, we talk about Infinity War. Like, they do such a great job of like tying everything back together and what it means emotionally to those characters. Like, yeah, people go see these and they're just like, yeah, Spider-Man's swinging around, beating people up. Great. Like, but those are characters that they mean something to people like us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and like all of those things said, I loved those about the movie. And obviously that was a big reason why I liked the movie. But like, that was the one movie that where I walked out was like the first time that I got excited about Tom Holland Spider-Man, because I was like, we finally saw him in like the bright red and blue costume. He was swinging through New York City. Like, as terrible as it sounds to be happy to see someone in a dingy apartment with no friends and no people, like, I was just happy to see, like, that's the Spider-Man that we all know. That's the Peter Parker we all know. And now all the rest of it makes sense. That they got to have him in their Avenger movies and do all that stuff, but they still went back to go, but we're still going to do the right Spider-Man. I don't know if they're actually going to do movies of it like that, but they said it in a way that I felt like, oh, I think they will. We're still getting the right one.
Yeah, I think they will.
Anyways, fun episode. I loved Spider-Man.
Me too.
My oldest son is named after Dick Grayson Robin, a Batman character, because my wife wouldn't let me name him Batman. And my second son's name is Parker, after Peter Parker, because Spider-Man is my second favorite superhero. So, I love that we got to talk Spider-Man.
We got to talk to Spider-Man for a long time. We got to talk about the best Spider-Man villains. I thought this was going to be a short episode, and we went on and on and on and on.
Yeah, we did.
So, good news, though. We're at the end of the episode. Circle back. If you're watching us on YouTube, please give us a like, give us a subscribe. If you're not watching us on YouTube, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Podcast Index. Social media, you can find us at Movie Dads Pod on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Give us a like, give us a follow. We'd love to hear comments. We'd love to hear suggestions for There Can Be Only Fives, things like that. Movies you'd like to hear us talk about, categories, things like that. Next week, episode 10, we've hit double digits.
Oh, baby.
We're getting ready for The Flash. Next week,
let's go.
We're doing a twofer, right? We're still doing a twofer. We're doing Tim Burton's Batman and Batman Returns. We're going to talk about them in one big discussion, but supersized episode 10.
Man, we do an episode about episodes on freaking Steven Seagal's Under Siege and D&D. Now we're talking about Spider-Man, Batman, freaking Ninja Turtles. Our next couple episodes for the next probably 2 or 3 months, they're going to be freaking awesome. Also, random last follow-up. I got that Batman Batmobile that I talked about last episode. That's way too expensive, and I'm glad my wife doesn't watch this podcast because she doesn't know I bought it.
It's for the best. Listen, everybody, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We will see you next week.
Bye.